The sulphurous wind whipped across Planet S-47, whistling through the jagged edges of discarded shuttle parts and abandoned military hardware. Known in black market circles as Junk Hollow, this planetary wasteland had become the final resting place for the universe's unwanted debris. Under a perpetually ash-colored sky, the sprawling field of twisted metal and corroded equipment stretched beyond the horizon, a monument to disposability. No one stayed in Junk Hollow by choice. The atmosphere was thin, the temperatures fluctuated wildly, and the only visitors were scavengers hunting for salvageable parts, always quick to leave before nightfall. No one except Lexera. She sat cross-legged inside the hollowed-out hull of a burned-out frigate, her back against cold metal. Scars of similar material crisscrossed her blue-tinged skin, evidence of military augmentations and biological tampering. Her eyes glowed a faint amber in the shadows, cybernetic implants constantly adjusting to the dim light. Her tattered clothing barely concealed the damaged exoskin beneath, which occasionally sparked with random electrical discharges. Lexera tilted her head, listening to the wind's mournful cry and the creaking of metal settling around her. The sounds triggered memories, unwelcome flashes of the Elysium Project, of being strapped to laboratory tables, of commanders referring to her as the biological weapon, of being deployed, feared, and ultimately discarded. Surviving in Junk Hollow required constant vigilance. Food came from scavenging old military ration containers, sometimes finding nothing but flavorless nutrient powder. Water was collected from rare morning dew or filtered through a makeshift purifier she'd cobbled together from salvage parts. And there was always the threat of ancient sentry drones still following their programming, scanning the junkyard periodically and ready to fire at anything that moved. "I'm registering a 12% drop in your caloric intake compared to last week," came a mechanical voice from the corner. Lexera didn't bother looking up. "Your sensors need calibrating again, Reese." A spherical object floated into view, cobbled together from mismatched parts. Camera lenses of different sizes, a dented communication array, and a small anti-gravity unit that occasionally sputtered. The AI unit, Reese, was as much of a patchwork creation as her shelter. "Correction, my sensors are functioning within acceptable parameters. It's your tendency towards self-destruction that needs calibrating," Reese replied, the lights on its surface pulsing with each word. "Remind me why I didn't scrap you for parts," Lexera asked, a hint of weariness in her tone. "Because my sparkling personality provides the only entertainment in this cosmic trash heap?" The bot drifted closer. "Or perhaps because I'm the only one who tolerates your brooding silence for days on end." Lexera's mouth twitched in what might have been the ghost of a smile. In the 3 years since she'd found Reese, abandoned like herself, the AI's sardonic commentary had become her only connection to sanity. "I don't brood," she finally replied. "Of course not. You merely stare contemplatively at nothing while radiating an aura of existential despair. Completely different." Lexera was about to respond when a flash of light in the sky caught her attention. She straightened, cybernetic eyes automatically zooming to focus on the distant glow. "Reese," the AI was already scanning. "Object entering atmosphere. Trajectory suggests uncontrolled descent. Structure appears to be a small transport vessel." After a pause, pilot survival probability, 8.7%. Lexera watched as the light streaked across the gray sky, leaving a trail of fire before disappearing beyond the mountains of scrap to the east. "Not our problem," she said, but found herself already reaching for her makeshift spear, a length of pipe with an energy cell jury-rigged to the tip. "Of course not," Reese agreed, floating toward the shelter's exit. "We're merely going for a casual stroll in the direction of a fiery crash." Completely unrelated. Lexera shot the bot a withering look, but didn't contradict it. Curiosity was dangerous in Junk Hollow, but after years of monotonous survival, even danger was preferable to another day of emptiness. Besides, crashes sometimes meant supplies. And if someone was actually alive, well, she'd figure that out when she got there. The crash site looked like just another pile of wreckage in a world defined by destruction, except for the fresh scorch marks and smoldering debris. Lexera approached cautiously, the energy spear held ready as Reese hovered at her shoulder, scanning for threats. Small personal shuttle, civilian model, the AI reported. Impact pattern suggests the pilot attempted to control the descent. Life signs detected, but faint. As if on cue, a section of twisted hull plating shifted and fell away. A figure emerged, a human man, his flight suit, torn and stained with both oil and blood. He staggered forward a few steps before collapsing to his knees, coughing violently. Well, he wheezed, looking up at the bleak landscape. They definitely forgot to include the landing cushions in the economy package. The man froze when he noticed Lexera standing there, her tall figure silhouetted against the gray sky, eyes glowing, metal implants catching what little light filtered through the clouds. His expression shifted from pain to terror in an instant. "Oh, hi there," he managed, trying to sound casual while clearly calculating his chances of survival. "I'm just passing through. Don't suppose you could point me to the nearest interplanetary rest stop?" Lexera stepped forward, spear still raised. "Who are you? Why are you here?" The man raised his hand slowly. "Name's Tyler Ward. Engineer. Courier. Occasional disaster magnet, apparently." He gestured vaguely toward his crashed shuttle. "I was on a supply run when I got caught in a magnetic storm, or shot down by pirates. Honestly, it all happened pretty fast. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead, and his left leg was bent at an unnatural angle. Despite his precarious situation, he maintained an expression that was equal parts pain and inappropriate humor. "You're on S-47, Lexera said flatly. "Junk Hollow." Tyler blinked. "The dumping ground? Fantastic. Of all the places to crash, I find a galactic landfill." He attempted to stand but gasped and fell back. "Look, I don't suppose you have a first aid kit, or a new leg, or a working communication array I could borrow." "She has none of those things," Reese interjected, floating into view. "Though she does have trust issues, weapons of questionable reliability, and a terrible habit of talking to herself when she thinks I'm powered down." Tyler's eyes widened at the sight of the cobbled-together AI. "Okay, a talking metal beach ball. That's actually not the strangest thing I've seen today. I'm an artificial intelligence companion with advanced diagnostic capabilities. Thank you very much," Reese replied, affronted. "You may call me Reese." "And you," Tyler said, looking back to Lexera. "Are?" Lexera hesitated. Names had power. Identities could be tracked. But this human was injured, stranded, and unlikely to survive long enough to be a threat. "Lexera. Lexera," he repeated, testing the name. "Well, Lexera, I hate to be a burden, but I'm losing blood. My leg is definitely broken, and I'm pretty sure this planet isn't known for its hospitable environment. Any chance you could help a guy out?" "No," she replied immediately. Tyler's face fell. "Right. Fair enough. I'll just try not to die too loudly then. Didn't you say yesterday that we were running low on protein rations?" Reese floated closer to Lexera. "And now here we have fresh meat, voluntarily delivered." Tyler's eyebrows shot up. "I taste terrible. Just awful. All gristle and bad jokes, I promise." Despite herself, Lexera felt something unfamiliar tugging at the corner of her mouth. Amusement. It had been so long since she'd interacted with anyone other than Reese that she'd almost forgotten what humor felt like. She studied the human. His injuries were severe, but not immediately fatal. He was no threat in his current condition, and leaving him to die seemed unnecessarily cruel, even by her standards. "I have limited medical supplies," she finally said, "and you'll leave as soon as you're able." Relief washed over Tyler's face. "Absolutely. Scout's honor. I'll be the most temporary guest you've ever had." Lexera moved closer, slinging her spear across her back before crouching to examine his injuries. Up close, Tyler could see the network of cybernetic enhancements across her skin, not merely scars but integrated technology, unlike anything he'd seen before. He began, then seemed to think better of it. "A military experiment?" Lexera finished for him, her voice cold. A biological weapon? A failed prototype? Choose your term. Tyler swallowed. I was going to say not what I expected to find in a junkyard, but sure, your options work too. She helped him to his feet, supporting his weight as he hobbled alongside her. Reese floated ahead, leading the way back to their shelter as the wind picked up around them, carrying the scent of rust and decay. Just so we're clear, Lexera said as they struggled through the debris field. First sign of trouble, and I'm leaving you for the drones. Tyler managed a pained smile. Totally reasonable. I do the same, except I'm too nice for my own good. It's a character flaw. As they made their slow progress across the wasteland, Lexera found herself wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake. Humans couldn't be trusted. She knew that better than most. But as the wind howled around them and the endless gray of junk hollow stretched in all directions, she also knew that some mistakes were better than endless solitude. 3 days had passed since Tyler's crash landing, and against Lexera's better judgment, he was still alive and sheltering in her makeshift home. The initial emergency, setting his broken leg with scavenged metal parts, treating his wounds with improvised antiseptics, had given way to an uneasy coexistence. To her surprise, Tyler had proven useful. Despite his injury, he'd managed to repair her water filtration system, improving its efficiency by 30% according to Reese's calculations. He'd also fixed the chronically malfunctioning power cell that provided their minimal electricity. How did you learn to do that? Lexera asked as she watched him rewire a heating unit, his fingers moving with practiced precision despite the poor lighting. Tyler shrugged without looking up from his work. Grew up on an orbital service station. When you live in a glorified tin can floating in space, you either learn to fix things or you learn to hold your breath for a really long time. Most engineers I've known wouldn't touch pre-war tech. Most engineers haven't been desperate enough, he replied, wincing as he shifted his splinted leg. Besides, the principles are the same. Electricity flows, circuits complete, things work. The rest is just adapting. Lexera leaned against the curved wall of their shelter, studying him. In the dim light, with his face smudged with grease and his dark hair standing on end, he looked harmless. But experience had taught her that appearances meant nothing. You're staring again, Tyler noted without looking up. Is it the dashing good looks, or are you calculating how quickly you could snap my neck? Both, she answered truthfully. He laughed, a surprisingly warm sound in their cold metal sanctuary. At least you're honest. After connecting 2 wires that immediately sparked to life, he added, unlike the people who put those implants in you. Lexera stiffened. They had avoided discussing her origins directly, dancing around the obvious questions with carefully neutral conversations. Now Tyler had breached that unspoken boundary. What do you know about it? She asked, her voice low. Tyler set down his tools, finally meeting her gaze. Not much. Military augmentation programs were classified, but there were rumors during the interspecies conflicts, soldiers enhanced beyond recognition, deployed to the front lines, and then he trailed off, and then discarded when the war ended. Lexera finished. When treaties made our existence politically inconvenient. Is that what happened to you? Reese, who had been quietly monitoring their conversation from a corner, interjected. Perhaps we should discuss something more cheerful, like inevitable mortality or the heat death of a universe. But Lexera found herself speaking anyway, words she hadn't shared with anyone. Project Elysium. They told us we were the future of warfare. Cybernetic integration, genetic modification, neurological reprogramming. They made us stronger, faster, more efficient killing machines. Her hand unconsciously traced one of the metal seams that ran along her forearm. And when the accords were signed, we became evidence of war crimes that needed to be erased. So they, what? Dumped you here? Tyler's expression was a mixture of horror and disbelief. The lucky ones got decommissioned. The rest of us were labeled as defective equipment and transported to disposal sites. Her smile was bitter. Welcome to the galaxy's most exclusive retirement community. Silence filled the shelter, broken only by the distant howl of wind and the occasional ping of Reese's monitoring systems. Tyler began, then stopped, seemingly at a loss for words. Efficient resource management? Lexera suggested sardonically. I was going to say monumentally screwed up, but yeah, your term works too. He ran a hand through his hair. How long have you been here? 5 years, 2 months, approximately 16 days. Reese answered when Lexera didn't. Though my chronometer may have a margin of error of plus or minus 3 days due to power fluctuations. Tyler whistled low. 5 years in this wasteland. I'd have lost my mind. Bold of you to assume I haven't, Lexera replied, but there was no edge to her voice. After a moment, Tyler returned to his repairs, but the silence between them had shifted from wary to something almost companionable. Later, as they shared a meager meal of reconstituted rations, he asked, "Have you ever thought about leaving?" Lexera looked at him sharply. "And go where?" The galaxy isn't exactly welcoming to military aberrations. Anywhere has to be better than a literal trash heap. Perhaps not, Reese offered. The probability of Lexera being identified and captured increases exponentially beyond this planet. Here, she is merely another piece of discarded technology. Elsewhere, she becomes a target. Tyler frowned, setting down his food packet. So that's it? You just stay here until you rust. We survive, Lexera said simply. It's what I was designed to do. Tyler seemed about to argue, but was distracted by a flashing light on one of his salvage devices. He crawled over to examine it, his face lighting up with excitement. I don't believe it, he muttered, adjusting some controls. There's an active signal relay buried under all this junk. Military grade, by the look of it. Lexera was on her feet instantly. Turn it off. Wait, this could be our ticket out of here. If I can boost the signal, maybe reconfigure it to transmit on civilian emergency frequencies. I said turn it off, Lexera repeated, her voice taking on a dangerous edge. That relay belonged to the same military that created me. If you activate it, you might as well paint a target on my back. Tyler looked up, conflict evident on his face. But if we're careful, if we mask the source, encode the transmission, we could call for help without revealing your presence. The risk is better than a lifetime in this scrapyard, Tyler interrupted. Look, I get it. You've been burned, literally and figuratively. But sometimes you have to take a chance. Easy for you to say, Lexera growled. You're not the one they want to dissect. Tyler's expression softened. No, but I am the one who'll die here without medical attention. My leg's getting infected, Lexera. I can feel it. She hadn't wanted to acknowledge it, but she'd noticed the signs. His elevated temperature, the sheen of sweat despite the cold, the worsening discoloration around his wound. Without proper antibiotics, sepsis was inevitable. Let me try, he pleaded. If there's even a chance we can get out of here. Both of us, don't we have to take it? Lexera turned away, conflict churning inside her. Survival had been her only goal for so long that the possibility of something more seemed like a dangerous illusion. And yet, I will not operate the relay without your consent, Tyler said quietly. I promise. Whatever we do together. She looked back at him, studying his face for signs of deception, but finding only genuine determination. Fine, she finally conceded. We'll try. But the first sign of military frequencies, we shut it down and destroy it. Understood. Tyler's relief was palpable. Absolutely. Scout's honor. Again. He grinned. Though between us, I was never actually a scout. Too busy taking apart our family's appliances. Despite herself, Lexera felt the corner of her mouth twitch upward. Why am I not surprised? Because you're an excellent judge of character, he suggested hopefully. Because you're exactly as much trouble as you look, she corrected, but there was no real heat in her words. As Tyler turned back to the relay, excitement evident in every movement, Lexera exchanged a glance with Reese. The AI's primary sensor dimmed in what she recognized as its equivalent of concern. I calculate a 64% probability of unfavorable outcomes, Reese stated quietly. Only 64%. Lexera murmured. Better odds than I'm used to. The salvaged relay station sat on an improvised workbench, its casing open to reveal a complex array of circuits and transmission equipment. Tyler had been working on it for the better part of 2 days, carefully rewiring components and programming new encryption protocols. Despite his worsening condition, the infection in his leg now causing him to shake with fever at intervals, his hands remained steady when it mattered. "The good news," he said, wiping sweat from his brow, "is that the core transmitter is intact. Military tech is built to last, even when thrown out with the trash." Lexera hovered nearby, tension evident in every line of her body. "And the bad news? The power cell is almost depleted. We'll get one shot at this, maybe two if we're lucky." He looked up at her. "Are you sure you want to do this?" She almost laughed at the irony of him asking her that question now, after she'd spent days trying to talk him out of it. "No, but you were right about one thing. You need medical attention." "Not just for me," Tyler insisted. "For both of us. You deserve more than this place, Lexera." Before she could respond, Reese floated down from where it had been monitoring the perimeter. "Transmission parameters are set. Frequency is masked and will appear as standard emergency beacon. Message is embedded with civilian identification codes. Probability of military detection, approximately 32%. Only 32%? That's practically a guarantee of safety," Tyler said with forced cheerfulness. "Ready?" Lexera took a deep breath, then nodded. "Do it." Tyler's fingers moved across the makeshift control panel, and the relay hummed to life. A series of lights flickered along its surface as it began scanning for available frequencies. "Transmission active," Reese confirmed. "Signal pattern consistent with civilian distress beacon." For several tense minutes, nothing happened. The relay continued to transmit, its power levels gradually decreasing. Tyler watched the indicators anxiously, adjusting parameters as needed. "Maybe no one's listening," he finally said, disappointment evident in his voice. "Or maybe they're too far away," Lexera suggested, feeling a strange mixture of relief and regret. Suddenly, Reese's sensors flashed rapidly. "Incoming transmission detected. Unknown frequency." Tyler straightened, excitement replacing fatigue on his face. "See? Someone heard us." But Lexera was already moving toward the relay, her expression hardening. "Shut down. Now." "But that frequency," Reese interrupted, its mechanical voice unusually urgent. "It carries military encryption patterns. Specifically, Elysium Project protocols." The color drained from Tyler's face. "That's impossible. The project was disbanded years ago." "Officially," Lexera said grimly, reaching for the power connection. "Nothing that expensive ever truly ends. It just goes underground." Before she could disconnect the relay, it crackled with an incoming message. A cold, precise voice filled their shelter. Signal identified. Asset Lexera located. Retrieval team dispatched. Cooperate or be terminated. Tyler stared at the relay in horror. "I'm sorry. I didn't think." "It doesn't matter now." Lexera cut him off, yanking the power supply free. The relay sputtered and died, but the damage was already done. "They found us. We need to prepare." "Prepare? For what?" She turned to him, her cybernetic eyes glowing more intensely than he'd ever seen. "For war." Outside, the perpetual gray of Junk Hollow sky was interrupted by distant lights, small, fast-moving craft entering the atmosphere. Reese's sensors continued to blink frantically. "Scouts detected. Preliminary analysis suggests military-grade surveillance drones. Estimated time until arrival, 17 minutes. Tyler struggled to his feet, wincing as he put weight on his injured leg. "What can I do? I got us into this mess. I'll help get us out." Lexera was already moving, gathering her weapons and the few defense systems she'd cobbled together over the years. "Can you still fix things with that fever?" "Watch me," he replied, determination overriding pain. For the next 15 minutes, they worked frantically. Lexera unearthed hidden caches of salvaged weaponry, energy cells, makeshift launchers, even a partially functional drone of her own. Tyler, meanwhile, rapidly modified their existing tech, boosting power outputs and reconfiguring targeting systems. "Incoming craft now within visual range," Reese announced, projecting a grainy image captured from outside. Configuration matches Elysium retrieval units. Tyler looked at the image, then at the collection of salvaged weapons they'd assembled. Not to be pessimistic, but we're outgunned by, well, a lot. We're not trying to win, Lexera explained, checking the charge on her energy spear. We're trying to survive long enough to escape. Escape to where? She pointed through a gap in their shelter's hull to where his crashed shuttle lay, partially buried in debris. Your ship. The engines are damaged, but the navigation system is intact. If we can power it up and reach orbit, we might have a chance. Understanding dawned on Tyler's face. A slim chance is better than none. He grinned despite the circumstances. Though if I'd known we'd be fighting our way off a junkyard planet while being hunted by a secret military program, I might have packed more snacks. Before Lexera could respond, the ground shook with a distant impact. Through the shelter's openings, they could see flashes of light where scout drones had begun scanning the area, their beams cutting through the perpetual haze. "They're here," she said quietly. Tyler gripped her arm suddenly. "Whatever happens, I'm sorry I brought this on you." Lexera looked at him, really looked at him, the human who had crashed into her life and upended years of careful isolation, who had fixed her equipment without being asked, who had made her laugh for the first time in memory. "Don't be," she finally said. "It was going to happen eventually. At least now I'm not facing it alone." His eyes widened slightly at that, but he nodded, a silent understanding passing between them. "If you two are quite finished with a sentimental moment," Reese interjected, "I believe it's time for what humans call raising hell." The first confrontation came faster than anticipated. 3 scout drones converged on their shelter, cutting through the outer hull with precision lasers. Lexera was ready, firing a salvaged pulse weapon that disabled 2 immediately. The third managed to transmit a location confirmation before Tyler jammed a repurposed power cell into its sensor array, causing it to short-circuit in a shower of sparks. "Retrieval team now aware of our exact position," Reese reported. "Countdown to full assault, approximately." For minutes, they gathered what they could carry and fled the shelter, making a zigzagging path through the labyrinth of junk toward Tyler's crashed shuttle. The terrain that had once been Lexera's sanctuary now became their advantage. Years of memorizing every path, every hiding spot, every unstable pile that could be toppled onto pursuers. "There!" Tyler pointed as they crested a hill of compressed debris. His shuttle lay below, its hull battered but largely intact. "If we can reach it," a searing beam of energy cut through the air between them, melting a path through metal scraps. They dove for cover as a squad of combat drones appeared over the ridge behind them, weapons charged. "Target identified," announced a mechanical voice. "Asset Lexera, you are ordered to surrender for retrieval. Resistance will be met with lethal force." From their hiding place, Tyler looked to Lexera, whose face had gone hardly still. "What's the plan?" Instead of answering, she reached up to an implant at her temple, pressing it in a specific sequence. Immediately, the cybernetic components visible on her skin began to glow with increasing intensity, power flowing through circuits that had been dormant for years. "Combat systems activating," she said, her voice changing subtly, becoming more mechanical. "Functionality at 62%. Is that good?" Tyler asked nervously. "It will have to be." She turned to Reese. "Initiate interference protocol. Maximum disruption." The AI bobbed in acknowledgement, preparing to be extremely annoying to enemy communications. "It's what I do best." Another energy blast struck closer, showering them with molten metal droplets. Lexera's eyes narrowed. "When I move, get to the shuttle. Start the pre-flight sequence. Don't wait for me." Before Tyler could protest, she burst from cover, moving within human speed. Her spear crackled with energy as she closed the distance to the nearest drone, leaping impossible heights to drive the weapon through its central processor. The remaining drones converged, weapons firing, but Lexera was already moving again, using the terrain to her advantage. Metal plates became shields, loose cables became tripwires, and every piece of junk became potential cover. Meanwhile, Reese had ascended to a higher position, broadcasting a cacophony of signals across all frequencies. The effect was immediate. Several drones began to struggle with their targeting systems, movements becoming erratic. Tyler watched in awe for a moment before remembering his task. Gritting his teeth against the pain in his leg, he began making his way toward the shuttle, using the distraction Lexera was creating. The battle intensified around them. More retrieval units arrived, including a larger command vessel that hovered ominously above the junkyard. From its hull emerged humanoid figures, combat synthetics designed for ground assault. "Asset Lexera," called a voice from the command vessel. "Surrender now. You are malfunctioning equipment. You belong to us." Lexera snarled, dispatching another drone with a savage thrust of her spear. The word struck deeper than any weapon could. Malfunctioning equipment belonging to them. The same dehumanizing language that had defined her existence. Across the battlefield, she caught sight of Tyler limping toward the shuttle, nearly there. One of the combat synthetics noticed too, adjusting its trajectory to intercept him. "Tyler," she shouted in warning, but her voice was lost in the chaos. The synthetic raised its weapon, targeting systems locked on Tyler's unprotected back. In that moment, something broke loose inside Lexera. Not the cold combat efficiency she'd been designed for, but something rawer, more human. Pure protective rage. She moved without thinking, cybernetic systems pushing beyond safe parameters as she hurled herself into the synthetic's path. The impact sent them both tumbling across the debris field, grappling for control as they crashed through years of accumulated junk. The synthetic was stronger, its systems newer and undamaged by years of neglect. It pinned her against a twisted bulkhead, mechanical hands closing around her throat. "Defective unit," it stated flatly. "Scheduled for decommissioning." Lexera's vision began to blur, power warnings flashing across her cybernetic display. She could feel systems failing, her augmented strength fading as the synthetic continued to crush her throat. Then, unexpectedly, its grip loosened. The synthetic looked down in confusion at the metal pipe protruding from its chest cavity, sparks erupting from the wound. Behind it stood Tyler, pale and sweating, but upright. "She's not defective," he gasped, twisting the makeshift weapon deeper. "And she doesn't belong to anyone." The synthetic systems failed catastrophically, its frame collapsing into Lexera's arms. She pushed it aside, staring at Tyler in disbelief. "You were supposed to be at the shuttle," she managed, voice raspy, from the damage to her throat. "Yeah, well," he shrugged. "I've never been great at following orders." Around them, the tide of battle had shifted. Reese's interference had thrown the retrieval team's coordination into chaos. Several units had been disabled, and the command vessel was struggling with what appeared to be system malfunctions. "We have an opening," Tyler said urgently. "But we need to move now." Together, they made their final push toward the shuttle, Lexera supporting Tyler as his strength began to fail. Behind them, the command vessel had begun to target their position directly, heavy weapons charging. "We're not going to make it," Tyler realized, looking back at the imminent threat. "Yes, we are," Lexera insisted, tightening her grip on him. As the command vessel's weapon systems reached full charge, Reese suddenly appeared, floating directly in its targeting path. "Suboptimal positioning," the AI commented drily, but statistically necessary. Before either of them could react, Reese broadcast a massive energy pulse, a suicide burst that overloaded its own systems but disrupted the command vessel's targeting array at the critical moment. The resulting blast went wide, carving a trench through the junkyard meters away from them. "Reese," Lexera called, watching the AI's shell fall dark and drop from the sky. "No time," Tyler urged, pulling her toward the shuttle. "Its sacrifice won't mean anything if we die too." With a final surge of effort, they reached the shuttle. Tyler collapsed into the pilot's seat, fingers flying across the controls despite his weakened state. Lexera sealed the hatch behind them just as the first impact struck the hull. "Power systems at 42%, Tyler reported. "Navigation online. Life support. Functional, barely. Through the viewport, they could see the command vessel repositioning, preparing for another attack run. The retrieval team wasn't giving up. "Can we make it to orbit?" Lexera asked, strapping herself into the co-pilot's seat. Tyler's hands continued to dance across the controls, bypassing damage systems and rerouting power. "Maybe. Probably not. But we're going to try anyway." The engines coughed, then roared to life. The shuttle shuddered, metal groaning in protest as Tyler pushed the damaged systems to their limits. Slowly, agonizingly, they began to rise. Energy weapons lashed the hull, warning alarms blaring throughout the cabin. A direct hit could still end them, but each second of ascent increased their chances. The thin atmosphere of S-47 began to give way to the darkness of space, the junkyard shrinking beneath them. "We're doing it," Tyler said in disbelief, watching as the command vessel grew smaller below. "We're actually going to make it." Lexera couldn't tear her eyes from the viewport, watching as Junk Hollow, her prison for 5 long years, receded into the distance. For the first time in memory, she felt something beyond survival instinct or combat programming. Something like hope. A final warning shot grazed their hull, but they were already beyond effective range. The shuttle broke free of the planet's gravity well, the stars opening up before them in all their infinite possibility. Tyler collapsed back in his seat, exhaustion and infection finally overwhelming him. "Where to now?" he murmured, fighting to stay conscious. Lexera reached over, taking control of the navigation system. "Somewhere they won't look for us. Somewhere we can get you proper medical treatment. And somewhere you won't be treated like trash." She glanced at him, surprised by the question despite everything they'd been through. "You know," Tyler continued, his voice growing fainter, "when I first saw you fighting back there, the way you moved, the way you refused to give up, I realized something." "What's that?" she asked, making minute adjustments to their course. "You're not trash. You're not even just a survivor." His eyes met hers, feverish but clear. "You're a miracle, Lexera. A goddamn miracle." The words hung between them, simple but profound in their impact. Lexera felt something shift inside her, a recognition that perhaps she was more than what they had made her to be, more than a weapon, more than discarded equipment. Tyler's eyes fluttered closed as the fever finally claimed him, his breathing shallow but steady. Lexera secured his unconscious form to the seat before turning her full attention to their flight path. The shuttle's systems were dangerously compromised. Life support flickered intermittently, and the power cells were depleting faster than they should have been. But they were free of S-47, free of the retrieval team, at least for now. As the planet shrank to a dull gray dot behind them, Lexera allowed herself a moment of reflection. 5 years in that wasteland, convinced she would die there, buried among the other things the universe had deemed worthless. Now the stars stretched before her, each one a possibility she'd thought, forever denied. And it had taken a human, fragile, fever-ridden, and irritatingly optimistic to make her see it. The medical facility on Outpost in K-12 wasn't impressive by galactic standards, but it was discreet and asked few questions when presented with sufficient payment. Lexera had traded the shuttle's salvageable military-grade components for both medical care and anonymity, a transaction the black market doctor had been more than happy to accommodate. 3 days had passed since their escape from Junk Hollow. Tyler had spent most of that time in a medically induced coma while nanobots repaired the infection damage and reconstructed his shattered leg. Lexera had remained vigilant, never straying far from his room, her senses constantly alert for any sign of pursuit. "You know, most people actually sleep during a recovery period," came a weak voice from the medical bed. Lexera turned to find Tyler awake, his color improved though his face was still gaunt from the ordeal. "I'm not most people," she replied, moving closer to check his vitals on the monitor. No argument there. He attempted to sit up, grimacing with the effort. "Where are we?" "In K-12, Independent Medical Outpost in the Krell sector." Tyler whistled low. "That's far from charted space. How did we get here in that half-dead shuttle?" "We didn't," Lexera said simply. "It gave out near the Verna waypoint. I traded it for passage here." "You traded my ship?" Tyler looked momentarily outraged before comprehension dawned. For my medical care? Lexera nodded once, uncomfortable with his scrutiny. It was beyond repair anyway, and we needed to disappear. That we did. He glanced down at his leg, encased in a regeneration field. Fancy treatment. Must have cost a fortune. Military components fetch a high price on the gray market. Tyler studied her face, noting the way she avoided direct eye contact. Thank you, he said simply. Lexera shifted, clearly unaccustomed to gratitude. You would have died otherwise, and you could have left me behind. Would have been easier. She didn't answer that, instead moving to adjust the room's environmental controls. The truth was, leaving him had never truly been an option. Not after he'd come back for her during the battle. Not after he'd called her miracle. Such thoughts were dangerous, creating vulnerabilities she couldn't afford, and yet she couldn't seem to suppress them. What happened to Reese? Tyler asked after a moment. I remember it doing something, sacrificing itself. Yes. The word came out sharper than she intended. It overloaded its systems to disrupt the command vessel's targeting. I'm sorry. I know it was your friend. Lexera wanted to deny it, to say that Reese had been just a salvaged AI, a tool, nothing more. But that would dishonor what the quirky bot had done for them. Reese saved us, she acknowledged. It would have made some sarcastic comment about the statistical improbability of our survival. But, yes, it was my friend. Tyler reached out, his hand finding hers. She tensed at the contact, but didn't pull away. So what now, he asked. Where do we go from here? It was the question Lexera had been avoiding since their escape. Freedom was a concept so foreign that she hardly knew what to do with it. 5 years of survival mode had narrowed her existence to the immediate, the necessary. Planning for a future seemed almost presumptuous. You should return to your life, she finally said. Once you're recovered, your family must think you're dead. Tyler's expression clouded. Don't have much family left. Station life doesn't lend itself to deep roots. He squeezed her hand gently. And I'm not sure I want to go back to courier runs after all this. There's a price on my head now, Lexera warned. The Elysium Project won't stop looking. Anyone near me is in danger. Good thing I've recently developed a taste for dangerous living then. He grinned weakly. Besides, I'm pretty sure they want me dead too at this point. Lexera pulled her hand away, fixing him with a serious stare. This isn't a joke, Tyler. They will never stop hunting me. I was expensive to create, expensive to train. They don't like losing investments. Then we'll just have to make sure they never find us. The word fell between them, weighted with implication. Tyler didn't flinch from her gaze. Unless you'd rather go solo. But I figured 2 fugitives might stand a better chance than one. Especially when one of them is a tech genius with roguish charm. Despite herself, Lexera felt the corner of her mouth twitch upward. Your modesty is overwhelming. It's one of my many qualities, he agreed solemnly. Along with persistence and an incredibly high tolerance for pain, apparently. Before she could respond, an alert chimed softly from one of the devices she'd salvaged from S-47, a signal scanner she kept to monitor for Elysium frequencies. She moved quickly to check it, tension returning to her frame. What is it? Tyler asked, immediately serious. Military channel chatter. Encoded, but I recognized the pattern. She adjusted some settings, her expression grim. They're expanding the search, sending retrieval teams to all nearby sectors. How long do we have? A day. Maybe less. Tyler pushed himself up, wincing as he swung his legs over the side of the bed. The regeneration field sparked in protest at the movement. What are you doing? Lexera demanded. You're not healed. Healed enough. With visible effort, he stood, leaning heavily against the bed frame. If we need to move, we move. Lexera shook her head in exasperation. Your human stubbornness is going to get you killed. Hasn't yet, he pointed out. And right now, it's keeping us both alive. He nodded toward the door. So what's the plan? Steal a ship? Bribe a transport captain? Disguise ourselves as interstellar luxury, cruise entertainers. Despite the gravity of their situation, Lexera found herself almost smiling again. I was thinking something slightly less flamboyant. There's a cargo freighter leaving for the outer systems in 3 hours. The captain owes me a favor. You've been busy while I was unconscious. Planning escape routes is second nature when you're a fugitive. Tyler took an experimental step, grimacing but remaining upright. Lead the way then, Miracle Woman. She shot him a look, but the nickname sent an unexpected warmth through her. No one had ever given her a name that wasn't a designation or a weapon classification. Certainly not one that implied something positive, something worthy. As they gathered their meager possessions and prepared to leave, Lexra caught a glimpse of their reflection in the medical bay's viewport. Tyler leaning slightly against her for support, her cybernetic implants glinting in the artificial light. They made an unlikely pair, the enhanced military experiment and the talkative human engineer. Fugitives, survivors, allies, perhaps even friends. Outside the viewport, space stretched infinitely, filled with stars that had once seemed like unreachable points of light from the surface of Junk Hollow. Now, there were beacons, guiding the way to whatever came next. The Elysium Project would keep hunting. There would be more battles, more narrow escapes. But for the first time since she'd been discarded, Lexra felt something beyond mere survival driving her forward. "Ready?" Tyler asked, standing straighter with visible effort. Lexra nodded, her decision made. "Ready." Together they stepped out of the medical bay and into their uncertain future, leaving behind the wasteland where one had crashed and the other had been abandoned. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it the same way they had escaped S-47, together, refusing to be defined by what others thought they were worth. No longer trash, no longer alone. Perhaps in their own way, something like miracles after all.